Hello everyone, this is Pamperchew. Today I found this vintage calculator at the thrift store. This is a Unisonic 1040, manufactured in 1975. Batteries that were in it were from around 2002 and had already leaked out. Well, it turns on, but I get this weird kind of display error. But I can fill it up, so all the segments seem to work. I think it's just some sort of controller error, or maybe something is shorted out inside. Here's some information on the back. Serial number 449512, and made in Taiwan. And then, like most calculators, it gives you some simple tests to make sure it works properly, and to also show how some of the features work. I think this has some interesting features I've not seen before, like a GPM. I have no idea what that, or EX. There's no screws on it, and I don't feel any hidden screws behind the sticker here. So I'm thinking it's just mushroom tabs around the side, and that should be easy to pop open with a few razor blades. Alright, so I was able to get the this corner popped up with a metal ruler, and just wedged it in there and just gently opened it up. It kind of reminds me of breaking into one of the iPods. They don't really want you fixing it, but it's really easy and cheap to assemble that way. Well, here's the back section taken off. This would be the keyboard right there, that tan one, and the main circuit board here. Looks pretty poorly built. A lot of the solder joints are just not done very well. You can see a few coal solder joints over here, a few with too much solder on them, and there's a lead that needs to be clipped off. And over here on the top there used to be, I think, a power connector, and that has broken off inside there, so I'm gonna have to take this board off and flip it over, see what else is damaged. The cover for the top also just came off. It's not too hard to work on, except for that thing there, which is all soldered on there. And I don't want to bend it too much because that might break a pin or two. But there's the integrated circuit underneath there. I'm just going to dry it out with a cotton swab first to see if it's just some water that got in there. Found, there it is. There's moisture on the inside of the screen there. Well, there's the tube on it. It's not the tube I was expecting. I was thinking it was going to be one of the cylinder-shaped ones. But it's kind of neat. Some capacitors there. I'm going to go take this over to the workbench where I can power it up with my power supply. These connections here are extremely corroded, even after cleaning it up, so I'm going to have to figure out a way to replace those, or maybe just sand them down a little. And also all the wires I want to hot glue down so that they don't break off. In one of my older videos I did a review on this calculator. I think it is also a Unisonic, and I was unable to find any information about this one online at the time, and the build quality in this was just terrible also. So I'm thinking they probably came from the same place. Yeah, very similar styling. This one came out in 72 or 73. That one, 75. It looks like they have about the same amount of processing power. Alright, I have it directly connected to my power supply. It is set at 6 volts, and I turned it on and it seems to be working a little better. You can see a section of moisture that just came off of it from me setting it on the table here, so I think the inside was completely soaked. Now, the batteries that were inside of this when I got it were those I think Energizer E squared batteries. You might remember from around 2001, 2002, when they were adding E to everything to make it sound better, like they do with I today, iPhone, iGadgets. Well, early 2000s it was E-Machine and E-squared batteries and all sorts of things like that. So, and they had leaked, I mean, with under 10 years, the expiration date on those batteries was 2007. I've never seen a battery leak just 5 years after an expiration date. So they were low quality, I guess. They were alkaline batteries, so they didn't have to deal with any lithium. I'm not sure if lithium batteries even leak, but I'm sure it would be worse if it did. Everything seems to be working now that it's drying. I see there's still a decimal point going across it. See if I clear it, if that fixes. I'm sure it's just moisture somewhere. When applying glue to a wire that's soldered to something, I always like to put the glue just after the solder joint, so if you ever need to rework it, you don't have to stick your soldering iron in the glue and damage your soldering iron. So I'm just going to put some, about half a centimeter from the exposed wire, so that it's tacked down to the plastic, taking the stress off any solder joints. I'm also going to do it on the board over here, because those ones are even more vulnerable to breaking off from just moving it around. I just put a little bit. So here you can see how I put glue on both sides of the wire, and then I kind of wiggle the wire around so that glue gets underneath it and just makes better contact to the plastic and the board. And right now I'm holding it flat against the board while it cools. And then there's I put the glue on those, and also flatten those pins over to make it just a little tidier inside, I guess. I think originally this was designed to have wires guided through these little notches here. There's a set of notches right here for the power from the battery pack. But in a lot of manufacturing assembly lines, they like you to work really fast so that they can ship more product. Some companies will inspect stuff like this, while others will just inspect the final product. If it works, they don't care what it looks like on the inside. For connections like these where there's no circuit board to glue the wires down to, I make it a little sturdier by dropping a bead of hot glue onto the wires and then kind of twisting them into it so that they're twisted and glued together in just that spot. Now I have all the wires glued down. I'm going to go ahead and try cleaning the back of the circuit board. I use a tool like this when I need to clean circuit boards. It gets between pins and just scrapes out the flux, or if there's some solder beads stuck in there. This board looks like it was just drenched in flux when they made it. The entire thing is coated with it. So I can't really get it all off, but I cleaned between the pins here where it looked like water had gotten to it. This white, filmy kind of stuff. Got most of it off, so you can't really see it now. But there was quite a bit right in here where that integrated circuit is. And what I just did seemed to fix the problem. Decimal points no longer lit up on the other segments. So it was just some water and something else mixed with the water that dried on the contacts and shorted them out just enough to let that signal cross over to the other decimals. I cleaned between the buttons and wiped the front of that fluorescent vacuum display so that there's no dust or crud stuck to it. And get it lined up. Make sure I don't want to mess it up here. And there we go. Pop it in. And now the back too. Come on, get in there. There we go. To scrape off the corrosion, I use this little metal tool that I found on the street. It's a street sweeper brush bristle that broke off. It's very hard steel. It will not bend. If you try to bend it, it'll go back to where it was. And you bend it far enough, it just snaps. So it's a very hard steel. Originally I picked it up to try and make a lockpick out of it, but it was too brittle and it just snapped. So I probably should heat it if I want to bend it. But just kind of press it down into the area where the batteries are going to make contact. Looks better. Well, after I put it back together, the old problem of the first digit repeating came back. So I'm wondering if maybe just a bad capacitor that's starting to short out or something like that. But if I have a signal actually in the registers, it has no problem displaying them. So there you go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I think it's just some very weak short. Alright, so I was able to find a solution to the problem with the first 4 digits repeating over on the other side, or the 1 digit repeating over the others. Under the board, you see, it's kind of hard to see in this lighting, but there's 2 transistors right here, and a can capacitor and a ceramic capacitor over here. When I lifted up these transistors, they were folded over and kind of leaning at a 45-degree angle, and I lifted them straight up and the display started working normally. So I'm thinking inside those transistors, the glue that seals the semiconductor inside the plastic, or however they made it, I think they're sonic welded shut. There's probably a loose connection on the semiconductor itself, causing it to not make good contact. It could also be the solder joints on the bottom, but just wiggling it around and pointing them straight up seemed to have fixed the problem, for now anyway. It's probably just bad transistors, crosstalk between the 2 transistors or something like that. I was thinking that it could have been that electrolytic capacitor right there. If it's starting to develop a short inside, letting just a little bit of current leak through from one transistor over to the other, if that's how it's set up, that would explain why it was repeating the first 4 digits to the second 4 digits. Alright, let's do a few tests of the functions. Power it up here. The clear and clear last entry, the square root. Let's do 81. I know it should be 9, and then 3. Good. Oh, clear. This EX button, I think it's just a storage for 2 numbers. So I can put 100, and then switch over to the other one and do 25 times 4 equals, and then add it to the other side. So you can do a little more complicated math without needing to remember a number to do the next step. Standard division, multiplication, subtraction, and addition. There's a memory plus, memory minus, recall memory, clear memory, and the GPM button is gross profit margin, or something completely different that I couldn't find any other information for, but generally on calculators the GPM is gross profit margin, and I have no idea how to make it work. But it's 100 times 500, and it crashed. Okay. I think it's doing that because of loose batteries. Yeah, well, they just fell right out. I'm gonna bend them a little further, the tabs. There, I bent the tabs in at 45-degree angles, and that was enough to make them like little springs again. Let's see if that... oh yeah, much brighter. Well, if anybody out there can tell us how that works, please post down below, because I don't think I've ever used that button for anything, ever. And you also have your negative, and Oh, that's weird. I didn't know that you can have -0. Normally you just type in the number and then hit negative, but it works both ways. Times 5. Divided by 4. Well, it seems to do maximum floating point. On some of the older calculators, you were limited to 4 decimal places. Square root of -1. Yeah, apparently they didn't have an error message system programmed on this.